Alpine, a well-known name in the car audio market. A company who brings revolutionary designs and concepts from amps, speakers, subwoofers, and especially head units. This was the first company to release the floating panel screen head unit, but now they supposedly stepped their game up with this new gen panel. Are these radios really upgraded, or did they change just the 4 to the 5 on the model number and say, okay people, here's our newest radio? Sit back, relax, and watch us uncover these radios and see if one of these are right for you. Stay tuned. Hey, what's up guys? My name is Josh. I'm with Breakers Stereo and Performance. Welcome to the YouTube channel that reviews, demos, and goes over the latest in aftermarket automotive accessories like car audio, performance, suspension, and more. Because we don't drive stock. And if you're like us, where stock just doesn't cut it, then join the Breakers Upgrade Nation by subscribing to this channel. As innovators of the floating panel radio, you would expect Alpine to have wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, but they don't. Until now. Alpine has not only added those features to these two radios, the iLX-F509, the 9-inch screen, and the iLX-F511, the 11-inch screen. But these are completely different radios, not only from a software standpoint, but hardware too. New screen, new body, and new mounting design, but more on that shortly. Now, wireless phone connectivity when it comes to Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is expected in any high-priced head unit. With other brands releasing their floating panel radios with those wireless features over a year and a half ago, Alpine has finally jumped on board. Better late than never. Strange move from Alpine, especially considering they were the first company in the world, whether aftermarket or OEM, to release wireless CarPlay with the iLX-107 back in 2017. Their floating panels were huge when they stepped first to the market in early 2018. But as time went on, they seemed to have left out some important anticipated necessities in today's demand in car audio. We received these radios last week, but we waited a few days to release the video on these radios so we can get a good hands-on experience before we did a thorough review. And let me tell you, these radios go beyond just having wireless features. Also, they took what we thought should change and corrected it. Now featuring a 720p resolution display, wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, and a 13-band parametric EQ that allows you to adjust the left and right side respectively.
What?
We'll get into the importance of that a little bit later. These radios definitely got a remodel as they deserved. In this video, we're going to talk about their specs, do an unboxing, and test them out. We'll give you the pros and cons, and finally, to end it off, we'll let you know what we think about these units. Okay, let's do it. Okay, so the 509 and the 511 come in their two respective sizes, being the 509 is a 9-inch display and the 511 is an 11-inch display. Both come in a single DIN 2-inch chassis. The new features added are, again, wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto with a quicker, more efficient processor. As mentioned, a 13-band parametric EQ, 8 bands more than the previous 5 bands that they put on the 11, and again, the ability to adjust the EQ channels left and right. Okay, the 720 display is an upgrade from the old 480. This also has 720p camera input, which is a huge plus. Front camera input without adding a switcher. Now you can switch the pitch on this screen without having to remove screws, which makes installation much easier. This does have a new Bluetooth mic, and the overall size of the panel is much smaller than the old ones, yet still retaining the same size screen. Also, 24-bit 96 kHz playback compared to the 24-bit 48 Hz playback in the previous models. Other features include AM/FM tuner with HD radio, standard Bluetooth, 6-channel 4-volt pre-outs, time alignment, high and low pass filters, bass engine SQ, which are preset EQs, media expander, more details on that later, Sirius XM compatible, 2 rear USB inputs, rear HDMI input, and HDMI output. Also an auxiliary input, iDataLink Maestro compatible. You will need to purchase the module separate. And you can also add an additional knob that adjusts not only the overall volume, but the subwoofer as well. Now the model number on that is the RUX-H01. Okay, so let's do the unboxing. We'll just do one because these come at the same exact parts, okay? So the only difference is the screen size. So let's go ahead and start with the 509, and I will take the 511 out screen to compare it against the old screen a little bit later. All right. Okay, these are the plastic brackets that go around the screen. All right, you have some paperwork here. It's gonna be your owner's manual, warranty information. All right, and then we have a whole bag of wires and harnesses here. So we'll just kind of break this down quickly. All right, so we have our main harness here, Bluetooth microphone. Now Alpine did use a different Bluetooth mic on this. Make note of that. We have our RCA pre-outs, front, rear, and sub, again, 4 volts. We have the microphone input here, also auxiliary and steering wheel control input. We have the camera input adapter. This is a GPS antenna. That's going to be used when you're using navigation apps. Okay, and then we have a zipper harness here. This gives you a rear camera input, driver recorder in, and then the iData link inputs. Okay, you also have all your hardware here. This is going to be to mount the screen onto the body. And then we have a bracket here and some other mounting hardware. And then you also have these stickers, and these are going to go behind the actual panel itself to kind of fill some of the gaps after you've mounted it properly. All right, so there is your screen there. This is definitely a whole different screen than the last model. The brackets are different, the way it mounts is different, the buttons are different on the bottom. It has a completely different look. Now I do have a 409 here handy, and I want to compare this against the old one. Physically, it's going to be about the same, okay? Now the 11-inch is considerably smaller, and I'll show you that here in a minute. But that is what they look like, okay, against each other. As you can see, you got different brackets here. This is the old, this is the new, so completely different. All right, let's take a look at the body. All right, so the body is slightly shorter than the old body. The old body I have here, right? So it is a little bit, not by a lot, but what I am noticing here is this sticks out. Now I believe this will go in as well, so I don't know if that's even a factor. But the body's slightly shorter, not a huge difference there, okay? All right, so let's take a look at the back of the new radio. So we have our main harness here. We have our HDMI input, also an HDMI output, which is great if you're running a monitor in the rear that has an HDMI input, so then you can mirror what's going on in the front to the rear, so everyone's watching the same thing. These plugs are going to be for the auxiliary and microphone input, also the RCA input here as well. And then the larger harness will give you your front and rear camera inputs, along with the iData Maestro harness as well. Then you have your GPS antenna input. Okay, then you have the Sirius XM input as well. Now you're gonna wanna make sure you have a newer Sirius XM plug into this. The older styles will not work. So I think if you get something that's less than 2 years old, you should be fine. And then you have your AM, FM antenna input. Okay, now Alpine did something different on this radio. You have pigtails. You have 2 different USB pigtails. One's for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and the other one is for charging and also for music playback. Okay, so I do want to do the 11-inch as well because the old 411, the screen was like really large and it had a really large border around the side. And a lot of people did not like that feature or did not like that about the 411. It was pretty massive for what it was, and Alpine has reduced the size of the overall monitor, but the screen size is the same. So there is our new one. All right, and I have a 411 here, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. As you can see, there's a pretty big difference between the two. So it's, I'd say, about an inch, more than an inch width-wise, and then height-wise, it's about a ½ inch, maybe even 3/4 of an inch difference there. But those measurements don't seem to be big, but when you're looking at these two, it is a big difference. A lot of people did complain about that. Alpine made the change, and we got the 511, which looks much, much sleeker. Now, let's take a look at how it mounts. So let me bring up the 509, new chassis. So it just clips in like this. And then you have some bolts on the top that you have to screw in. And then you can adjust the height on this. So there's screws behind here that you would loosen up, and then you can move this up and down. But what they did differently, as I mentioned earlier, is you're able to control the pitch without having to unscrew anything. So you can pitch it back like that, okay? Or you can pitch it forward. It does take a little bit of strength in order to do that, so it's not flimsy. Whereas in the old design, you actually have to take a couple screws out in order to change the pitch. So Alpine did a great job. So you don't have to do as much to get this thing adjusted. And then all these panels here are gonna go over the top. There's one very important one that goes here, and if you don't have that one in, it will not turn on. Okay, so let's fire this thing up. Okay, so let's go ahead and check this thing out. Here's our home screen. Right off the bat, it's much cleaner. It's a 720 screen, so obviously it's gonna be sharper, it's gonna be more vivid than the last screen, okay? On the home menu, you can see we have all our sources. We have our radio, USB, HDMI, Sirius, auxiliary, Bluetooth, dash cam. So you can add Alpine's proprietary dash cam. We'll be able to add that directly to this radio and see what's going on that dash cam on the face of these radios. Next, we have Apple CarPlay, and then we also have some sources here on the bottom, as you can see. So you have your phone, CarPlay, Android Auto, and then your setup. All right, so you have your buttons here on the bottom. Now this right here, if you tap this will activate whatever voice command you got going on. So if it's an iPhone, it'll activate Siri. If it's an Android, it'll activate Google Assist. All right, so if I tap that there, that activates that. Takes me directly to Apple CarPlay. This right here will take you directly to your mapping, regardless of what mapping you're using. Hit that button, takes you directly to your navigation. Okay, next you have mute. Okay, and then you have your music button. That's for the home screen. Then you have your camera, and that you can toggle between your rear camera and also if your front camera is hooked up, it'll allow you to get to that as well. Then you have track up and down here. Okay, let's talk about the audio menu. If you tap this button here on the top, that'll bring down your audio menu. You can see we have a battery voltage meter that's in the center of the radio. That's something new that Alpine brought to the table here. But we have our audio settings all set up here, so you don't have to necessarily go through the menu in order to get to these. So that's a nice feature that Alpine had on the old one too, and they brought it forward with these ones as well. All right, so on crossovers, let's just take a look at that briefly. So you have front, high pass, and low pass. So that gives you band pass for your front and also for the rear. And the frequencies, let's take a look at. So let's set here the front high pass, okay? And you have different octaves. So you have 6 dB, you have 12, 18, and 24, okay? And then your frequencies will range as high as 250 and as low as 20, okay? And that goes true for basically both the high pass and the low pass on the front, rear, and also the sub. Next on this menu, we have your bass engine SQ. So basically what this is, these are preset equalizers that Alpine has set up for you. So if you're not gonna use the EQ settings here and you want something that's quick and easy, if you tap this, right, and you turn it on, okay, you have standard mode, you have mid bass, rich, low pass, punch, and then off. As you can see, there's also different levels too. So you can choose your levels between 1 and I believe 6. And then we have media expander. Now you can either have that on at 1, 2, or 3. Okay, so what media expander is this. So this will increase the top and bottom end on anything that's rolled off because it is compressed. So if you're using your B3, this is a good feature, but otherwise, for better sound quality, just use WAV files. Okay, so you have balance and fade. Here you can actually go and turn your subwoofer on or off, and then time correction. Okay, so time correction, you're able to measure from the center speaker to the driver's side headrest on each speaker, okay? And that'll set the delays for you. We're gonna talk about that here a little bit more in a minute. And then finally, let's talk about the EQ settings. We've been talking about this for a while here on this video. This is your parametric equalizer. So parametric means you can choose the frequency on the band that you want to boost or decrease, okay? And this also has the Q as well, so it could be either narrow, medium, or wide, okay? So that's on the advanced EQ. We'll go back to that here in a minute. If you go to basic EQ, then it's just gonna give you front, rear, and sub. And then there's also presets as well. Let's go back to the advanced EQ and the importance of having left and right separation for the equalizer. But let's give this a breakers breakdown because it is important.
Breakers breakdown. Subject, Soundstage. Now the car environment has a big impact on all the different frequencies that speakers will play at different levels, especially because there is so much going on in a car's interior. Alpine goes further by giving you left and right equalization. Now I asked Chris Tagu at Alpine to better explain the importance of having separate left and right EQing, and this is what he had to say. When tuning a sound system, you want the left speaker to sound exactly like the right speaker, given the same signal, like peak noise. If one frequency is louder on the left than it is on the right, it's gonna sound like it's coming from the left. So if you have a singer that's supposed to be center and one of those frequencies they hit is louder on the left than the right, then it sounds like they're pulling from the left on certain words, breaking the illusion of a center image. Then he goes on to say, so when you can independently adjust left and right speakers, you can better match them, which gives you the proper soundstage image. So I asked him, what's the difference then between time correction and left and right EQing? And here's what he had to say. So time correction basically delays the closer speakers so all the sound hits you at the same time. That gives you the illusion that you're in the center of the car. So assuming that both speakers perform the same, it would be a perfect staging without doing any left or right equalization. Now this is typical for home audio because it's usually in a big room and there's not a lot of obstacles or materials that affect the sound before it hits your ears. But in a car, it's completely different. Not only do you have to correct for being on the left of center, but you also have to account for the materials like glass on the car's interior. All these things have an effect on certain frequencies, which either magnify or reduce certain sounds depending on where they're coming from. So even though electrically, two speakers should perform exactly the same, the vehicle causes them to sound different where you're seated. He further says, so delaying gets you in the middle of the speakers. Left and right EQ makes sure the middle stays the middle no matter what's being played. The left and right EQ is key to fantastic staging, but not a lot of people do it. Definitely more difficult than time correction, but it gets you that last 10% of great staging. Thank you, Chris, for this easy to understand explanation. Make sure to check out Chris on Alpine's YouTube channel. He has a series called What's New with Tagoo, where he blesses us with his audio knowledge and goes over Alpine's new products. Now, in order to get this done correctly, you will need an RTA or real-time analyzer to measure and adjust these things. Now, an RTA can be expensive, but Audio Control makes an RTA for about $250 that you can hook up to your smartphone that works very well. Now, for more details, check out Car Audio Fabrication on YouTube. Mark does an excellent job explaining how to use this tool in detail. Okay, guys, we hope that helps. All right, moving on, guys. Let's go ahead and go to the main menu, and we'll just go to Setup. We'll take a look. You have your device list, your Wi-Fi, because this does have your wireless. Your Wi-Fi is here, your Bluetooth is here, device information is here. Okay, our function. This will basically give you different volumes for CarPlay and also for Android Auto. Then you have your radio, your Sirius XM, USB, iPod. Now, if you choose a source, you can also choose the volume level here as well. Okay, so every time you choose a source, it'll give you that option where you can adjust the volume. Okay, now you have your HDMI input. All right, so since we're on that, let's go ahead and plug a phone directly into this so you can see how good the screen actually is. Okay, so I have my phone going on the screen. As you can see, it's got nice bright colors. It's really vivid, really sharp. Now keep in mind, this is a smaller screen, so it looks good for 720. Obviously, if it was a 1080 or 4K, it would look a lot better, but for this size screen, 720 does a really good job. Okay, so we were here, HDMI, you have phone, you have your Bluetooth audio settings that you can go through. Dash cam here, you can set that up in this menu. Also your backup camera or your front camera. So here you can select the camera settings, also the parking guidelines. Okay, and the video setup will allow you to adjust the brightness and contrast and color for your camera. So you have an option to mute while you're backing up, so you can select that on or off here. Next, let's go into system. Here we have key sound feedbacks. All right, you have some microphone adjustments here, your language, clock adjustment. Home screen, you can set that to either normal or enhanced. Enhanced is going to be fairly large, or larger at least. And then we have the screen lighting. Okay, you can adjust illumination level and the dimmer level. We have screen color. So you have a couple different backgrounds you can choose from here. Source priority setup. Okay, so you can set that in whatever order you like. And then vehicle type. Select what side the steering wheel is on, the fuel type, and then there's also an EV connector type here as well that you can choose from. Then you have installation statuses. This is a nice feature. This is going to tell you what's connected, what's not connected. So you have your cameras, your Maestro, Sirius XM dash cam, GPS antenna, and also your parking brake if that's engaged or not. And then here's your software. This will tell you what software version is running, and then you could also update here as well. Okay, let's go into Apple CarPlay really quick. Okay, so we're in CarPlay. Again, the image is nice and bright, very vivid. Now again, this is wireless CarPlay, but obviously you can do wired as well. Just really briefly, this is going to transfer over all your music apps, Spotify, Pandora, whatever you got. Then we also got Google Maps,
Waze, and then it'll also do your Apple Maps as well. And then it will do messaging apps like WhatsApp and of course your standard text messaging. Okay, let's check out Android Auto. Okay, so now I have an Android phone plugged in. Let's go and tap that really quick. Okay. All right, so in Android Auto, you guys are all pretty familiar with this. All your apps that will transfer over will come up here, and then you can just simply select. Same thing, so music apps, navigation apps, messaging apps will all populate here. Okay, so that'll conclude the demonstration. All right, pros and cons. Now it's really hard to give these radios cons, especially against the predecessors. They actually gave it better features than before. The way these radios perform is outstanding, and it has every single thing you'd expect out of radios at this caliber. From having wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto to having a higher res screen. We think Alpine did everything right. Now we obviously don't expect every radio to be perfect, but these two definitely stand out. We would like to see a higher resolution screen at 1080. It's implemented in some of their competitor screens, and for a company whose main focus is car audio, we'd expect it to have at least that. But with that being said, that's the only real con. Everything else in this radio is absolutely clean. The screen looks modernized and sleek, and the performance is high. To conclude our review, we'll have to say if you're in the market for a radio with a big screen and a ton of goodies, these are most definitely for you. The 509 and the 511 do an amazing job on performing the tasks they're designed to do. It's an actual multimedia radio that plays music, runs Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, can mirror your phone through the HDMI, and gives you tons of great audio options. I believe that anyone who grabs one of these and puts it in their car will absolutely appreciate every single aspect of them. Now, we don't do this often, but we're gonna give these radios a full 5-star rating. If you're interested in either of these radios, click the links in the description below to go directly to the product page. Remember, financing is available. Simply add to cart, pick a financing option, get approved, and we'll send your gear out to you ASAP. Okay, that's gonna do it. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to this channel to see more videos like this one. Again, my name is Josh. I'm with Breaker Stereo and Performance. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.